Hi you guys. So we had a new moon in the sign of Taurus at 3:45 p.m. Pacific time today. I'm doing this maybe an hour and a half, almost 2 hours after the new moon. It's not by design. I knew I would do it after the new moon, so I'm doing it now. Let me break down several things in this video, and you can see if you find this video useful, and if you do, you may want to come back with a pad and paper and write down the dates and stuff like that I'm laying out for you. Let me reduce this. There's something so Taurian about standing underneath an avocado tree and doing a new moon in Taurus video. The sun entered the sign of Taurus on April the 20th. While the sun is traveling over the sign of Taurus over the course of 30 days, the moon is going to, the sun goes over 30 degrees. The sun goes over 1 degree a day as far as your chart is concerned. So the sun is in a sign roughly for 30 days. And the moon takes 28 days to go around the entire chart. So at some point while the sun is moving across a particular sign, the moon is going to go around and meet up with it, and that creates the new moon. At the time of the new moon, the sun and the moon are aligned, and the light of the sun blocks out the light of the moon. That's one way to, I'm going to put it that way. The bottom line is a planet that is extinguished by the sun, and the moon is not a planet, of course, but from an astrological perspective, we consider it, let's just say, a heavenly body that is blocked out by the sun, is burning off its previous cycle and restarting a new cycle. We have a new moon and the start of a new 28-day cycle. And at the start of a new 28-day cycle in the sign of Taurus and in the part of your chart where Taurus sits. When we look at the 28-day timeline, I've been through some of this before, but I'm going to cover some of this basic stuff first while I dive into details. The new moon happens, and there's an increase in energy as the moon goes around. If the sun is here, the moon is going to go around the sun, and by the time it gets opposite the sun, 14 days from today, we'll have a full moon in the sign of Scorpio. And then as the sun keeps traveling, of course, the moon and the sun are going to meet up at 0 degrees Gemini for the next new moon. So we're going to have one new moon in Taurus that's happening today, 14 days from now, a full moon in Scorpio, and then 14 days from that, 28 days from today, a new moon at the very start of Gemini. Am I right about that? Oh no, the new moon in Gemini is at 13 degrees. Why am I thinking of, I'm thinking of the first degree, I'm thinking of 0 degrees Gemini for a reason. Okay, people, calm down. Calm down, calm down, everybody. So let me just rephrase what needs to be corrected. There's something going on at 0 degrees of Gemini, but we'll cover that when I get to it. Closer to, so the bottom line is it remains. New moon today, 14 days from now. Full moon in Scorpio, 14 days from then, new moon in Gemini. That's all we need to know. From the new moon today, there's an energetic increase and then a peak around the full moon. So we have 2 weeks where our energy is going to increase, and we are going to feel inclined to start on something, work on things, give it a push. It'll reach a culmination around the time of the full moon, and then after the full moon, the energy will start to diminish as the moon gets closer and closer to the sun, and the moon will then burn off this 28-day cycle as it gets to the sun and start a new one in the sign of Gemini. Great, so we're clear about the new moons. Insofar as what they are, we're clear that it's happening in the sign of Taurus. Taurus, the moon loves the sign of Taurus. Taurus, the moon stands for our emotional fulfillment, and Taurus is a sign ruled by Venus, and so much of Venus is about our emotional fulfillment, whether it has to do with relationships, Venus rules the sign of Libra, or whether it has to do with material fulfillment, riches, food, abundance. And really, our appreciation of being on this planet, being fertile, enjoying the fertility of the planet, and the abundance that being on this planet brings. Food, trees, plants, money, luxuries, a nice home, what you own, what is in your name, your resources. Conserving those resources, increasing those resources, maintaining and stabilizing those resources. Taurus is a notoriously stubborn and stable sign. Notoriously, famously, whatever your relationship to conservation is, and the idea of sustainable appreciation of everything around us, including this planet, are very Taurian concepts: a beautiful home, the birds, the trees, the plants, money, wealth, luxuries, but more importantly, emotional satisfaction and joy and happiness that comes with being on this planet. It doesn't feel like that, but I think that has more to do with man-made things than natural things for the most part. It's not that nature isn't hard and cruel and all that kind of stuff, but anyway, enough said. New moon in Taurus. What is of greater interest as far as the new moon in Taurus is where, in what part of the chart, in what house of the chart this new moon is occurring. If you know that, good for you. The bottom line is, and this is the most important part of this video, what I'm about to say here, and other people who've been following my videos have heard this before. A new moon happens, and on the one hand, it helps define the next 28 days, okay? 14 days to the full moon, 14 days after the full moon. The full moon certainly creates its own impact that colors the second set of 14 days of this 28-day cycle. But you can look back 28 days from now at this starting point and it'll be a discrete cycle. Great. 2 weeks from now is a full moon. With a new moon, I always say, watch what comes to you within 48 hours of a new moon. Something subtle but unmistakable. Could the 48 hours turn into 72 hours? Could it turn into a week? Could it turn into 2 weeks? Yes. I'll be somewhat conservative and generous and say that, but more often than not, folks, within 48 hours of a new moon, something will present itself. And if you know what part of the chart the new moon sits in, so much the better. Now, some of the groundwork for whatever it is that is new and subtle and unmistakable that may make its way to you has already been laid, because the sun entered the sign of Taurus on April the 20th, which was a day after the last full moon, which was in Libra, and 13 days have already gone by while the sun has been in the sign of Taurus, doing its solar work of subconscious review of wherever this new moon is happening. So a certain amount of groundwork, a certain amount of progress, a certain amount of events and happenings have already been occurring, and today we have this new moon. So whatever might be brought to you, or you start to work on, or you start to launch, some of those activities or some of those thematically linked ideas, notions, products, activities have already been in place since April the 20th. But the more important thing with a new moon and the joy of a new moon is the fact that something new may be presented to you. It could be subtle, unmistakable. I say subtle because it's not like our worlds are rocked every 28 days. But keep an eye out for that. The next 48 hours, the next 72 hours, what is being brought to you. If you know where Taurus sits, wonderful, and just see where things go and how they grow. Now, when it comes to the sign of Taurus, we've covered that. When it comes to the new moon and what new moons are, we've covered that. When it comes to the new moon in Taurus, we've covered that too. I have learned over time, and I enjoy over time, observing where the ruling planet of the sign where a lunation is happening sits and what's going on with that. So the new moon in Taurus is ruled by Venus, because Venus rules Taurus. Venus is in the sign of Aries. Number one, if you know where the sign of Aries is in your chart, it will help you understand thematically, again, some of the things that are happening in this particular cycle. And what are these new things that are brought to you, and do they have any correlation with that? Venus has been pretty active as far as lunations are concerned, because the last two full moons on March the 19th and March the 20th and April the 19th were in the sign of Libra, also ruled by Venus. So relationships particularly have taken quite a tremendous amount of focus. On March the 20th, Venus was in Aquarius. So there was something on the March 20th full moon that had more to do with independence and questioning and independence and establishing the truth in a relationship. And the April 19th full moon Venus was in the sign of Pisces. And so there was a greater correlation or link at that time, although both the Libra full moons were happening while Mercury was in Pisces and all this Pisces energy was happening. So there was a correlation, there was an important presence with the last two full moons and a connection of the last two full moons with all the Pisces activity that were happening that were related to the crises in 2015, 2016, November 15th to December 31st of 2018, and from February the 10th onwards. However, this new moon ushers in some new energy on a variety of different levels. Relationships, I think, may still be taking quite a bit of a beating. Some of the beating may be necessary and desired. If there are certain relationships that feel like they have served their course and certain truths have been established, then Mercury in Aries will assist a troubled and pissed off and uncomfortable Venus who feels that the divine feminine in each of us is not being honored, and arrows may be shot in the form of communication, spoken, written word, emails, letters, whatever, to move things forward. Some of this is going to be necessary progress. Some of this is going to be tearing down relationships to some extent. So watch that energy. As I said in, not my last video, but the video before when I discussed Venus and Mercury in Aries, if there are relationships that are important to you, try to protect them with a flame while a certain amount of truth-telling and truth-seeking is being, while a certain amount of combative but perhaps necessary action is being taken. So establish and figure out what that is. But in other instances, Venus's presence in the sign of Aries, watch my video about Venus in Aries, about what Venus feels like in Aries. She's not happy in Aries, is going to perhaps color this new moon and continue to bring relationships into a certain amount of focus. More importantly is the fact that Venus is in a particular part of your chart, a particular house of your chart where Aries sits, and those houses' activities are important related to this new moon. So those people who know about the houses and where Aries sits, pay attention to that over some of the stuff I just said. Now, even more about this new moon and what to look out for. The planet Uranus is now in Taurus for 7 years. And wherever Uranus is, that part of the chart experiences liberation and independence and inquiry. Inquiry of a kind that creates epiphanies and brings us closer to the truth. And in bringing us closer to the truth and brings a certain amount of enlightenment, a certain burning away of bullshit, and therefore creates liberation and independence and brings intelligence and truth to whatever part of epiphanies, clarity, greater spiritual growth, to whatever part of the chart that it is transiting in. It is possible that the new moons of the next 7 years somehow facilitate this process. So one of the questions to ask is this new moon somehow starting or inaugurating a process and bringing you things that over the next 7 years are going to contribute to this greater sense of independence and truth and inquiry in whatever part of the chart Uranus is in. Taurus, wherever Taurus sits in your chart. Okay, so it's going to be unclear at present, but it'll be interesting over the course of the next 7 years. Why do I say 7 years? The new moon is going to happen every year, sometime between April 20th and May 22nd, 23rd, in this part of the chart. So 7 new moons at least. We may have a year when we have 2 new moons. I haven't looked at all the new moons dates over the next 7 years. And so it might be interesting to see over time whether what the new moons bring in Taurus, the first one having been today, whether it somehow contributes to the sense of independence and liberation in the part of the chart where Taurus sits for you. Okay, what else do I want to say? The new moon is also imprinting a time when Mars is opposite Jupiter. So 2 pretty enthusiastic, exuberant planets of a slightly different nature, but pretty masculine planets, Mars being the masculine planet, are opposing each other. I think the word I would use is energy. It could be that it is a pretty energetic 28-day cycle, particularly the first 14 days to it. The Scorpio full moon is a pretty charged up full moon. So it could be that as we head towards the Scorpio full moon, which actually happens on May the 18th, that the dates around the 18th, let's just say May 15th to 20th, are pretty activated. And actually they will be for a variety of reasons, and I want to touch on that in a second. So keep listening to get clarity on those dates. So This new moon liberates us a certain amount from the energy that has been active related to 2015-16 crisis, November 15th, 2018 to December 31st, 2018, and since February the 10th of this year till April the 26th, 28th of this year, somewhere around there. So whatever that Pisces energy cycle was that was so hard to shake off, this is a new moon that actually starts to create some new energies. Why? Because we had a new moon in Aries on, April the 5th. But, by the time there was still a lot of Pisces energy. There was still a lot being worked out at that time related to the old Pisces energy. We have a new moon in Taurus. The sun is already in Taurus. We have Uranus is already in Taurus. We have a new moon today. 2 days from now, Mercury leaves Aries on May the 6th and enters the sign of Taurus, joins all this activity. So communication, letters, contracts, speaking, talking, there's a certain amount of communication and commuting and transactional energy that will also enter this part of the chart to facilitate perhaps some of the energies that the new moon and the sun have already been trying to inaugurate. And most significantly, Venus, the ruler of Taurus, enters Taurus on May the 15th. So new moon on May the 4th, Mercury comes in May the 6th, Sun and Uranus already here. May the 15th, Venus comes in. Venus loves Taurus. Financial opportunities, relationship opportunities, a stabilizing presence, a planet that rejoices where she's at, finally. Happy in Pisces, not happy in Aries, happy in Taurus. So there's a certain amount of concentrated Taurian energy that we're going to be dealing with that really brings focus and attention to this part of the chart. It doesn't mean that some of the Pisces crap that we were dealing with is just going to disappear, or the Aries energy is going to disappear. Those parts of the chart are going to remain active. But this new moon really does pull your attention, and it kind of has a little bit more forward pulling attention. Yes, Saturn and Pluto are retrograde, but the personal planets, Mercury is moving forward really fast now, Venus is moving forward, Mars is moving forward. There's a certain amount of forward moving energy, new themes, new topics, other aspects of life. Try to, decreasing some of the pressure and some of the focus on things that have been weighing us down in February, March, and April that are now going to start to move us forward. There's also something about this new moon that imprints eclipse energy that we've been having in Capricorn. The solar eclipse at the beginning of January 5th, I think it was, and the corresponding lunar eclipse in the sign of Capricorn, that's going to be July the 16th. An important date that is coming up, and I will discuss this as we get closer to it, is May the 16th. If the lunar eclipse is on July the 16th, I look to the date 2 months before that lunar eclipse, May the 16th, to see if some important message comes to us related to this eclipse, where Capricorn is. You would say Capricorn, Aries, Pisces, all these signs have nothing to do with Taurus, and you're right. But lunations imprint whatever's going on around them at that time and put that imprint on the cycle that they inaugurate. So an energetic cycle, perhaps a cycle that proceeds to make us more independent, and there'll be more of these over the next 7 years, and liberated and enlightened, and could somehow be in communication with some of the Pisces energy because it's sextile Neptune, but more importantly, continues, because there's so much activity around the South Node, continues this idea of eclipses of release and releasing something and shedding something and doing some hard work or disciplined work and transformation work around whatever it is that you're releasing. And watch for that May 16th date. May 15th, Venus comes to Taurus. May 15th, Mars enters Cancer. Not that great necessarily. May 18th, we have the full moon in Scorpio. And May 16th, we have this eclipse anniversary. So May 15th, 16th, and 18th are important days. As I said, May 15th to the 20th or so, going to be quite a charged time, and I would pay attention to, and I will repeat this when we get closer to those dates, the week before May 16th and the week after, for notable events that I would look out for. The sun will leave Taurus and enter Gemini on May the 21st, and Mercury will also leave Taurus and enter Gemini on that day. Mercury rules Gemini, but it's going to be right next to the sun, and I'll talk about that as we get to that point too. But that gives you an overview between this particular new moon and the next new moon. Let me bring this together. Let me see if there's anything else I really want to know. Let me bring this together. New moon today in the sign of Taurus, finally a new forward moving set of energies and the inauguration of a 28-day cycle that could somehow be liberating in some ways and put our focus on new energies that we have not really dealt with this year, that may have been brewing since April the 20th, greater focus, but it could be that the next 48 hours bring us something subtle and unmistakable that could be liberating, that definitely builds on the work that has been going on since April the 20th, but is a new and fresh set of energies and fresh place to focus, even while we are wrapping up some of the things that have been with us since February, March, and April. An energetic cycle, an energetic 28-day cycle. The next 28 days will be marked and imprinted by this new moon. And I would say enjoy and welcome this particular new moon. And finally, I will say that that relationships continue to be a focus. They continue to be a focus. You know, the ruling planet of this new moon is in the sign of Aries and has been playing a key role in determining what is working for her and what is not working for her. And I say her, but I'm talking about the her that exists in all of us. And that her is extraordinarily protective of boundaries and a certain truth and demands a certain respect. And so whether you're male or female or however you identify, the inner feminine is really taking note and taking action with regard to what relationships feel like they would be long-standing and have an air of authenticity and truth and respect and constructiveness around them, and what do not, and is taking action accordingly. So even though on the surface this new moon does not technically have anything to do with relationships unless it falls in a relationship-oriented part of your chart, I do think that relationships will be one of the themes that will continue to be an area of focus. Outside of that, I've given you a fair amount of information in this new moon video. You're welcome to come back and get the dates and listen to it again just to break it down. But I'll leave it at that and continue to be in touch to break down some of these energies as they occur. Watch for the May the 16th date and the energetic shifts around that time and events around that time. They will be notable and they will be important. Okay. Share, like, subscribe. Share, like, comment on this video, subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon to be notified when I post videos, please, and have a great new moon and a great month ahead. I'll be back in touch. Thanks.